Okay, we're going to move next to our leadership panel. So it's actually Mr. William Lowe and myself. And so a quick introduction. Mr. Lowe is a member of the Board of Directors for the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, and he's been on for a couple of years. And also he's speaker, right? Speaker of his tribe, the Muskogee Creek tribe. And so I'd like to introduce Mr. Lowe, and he's going to join me, and we're going to talk about leadership. So, Will, come on up.
Hishche Stongo, Obanaya William Lowe, Jehojifkadas. What I said is, hello, my name is Speaker William Lowe. I am the current Speaker of the House for the Muskogee Creek Nation out of Oklahoma, hence my country accent, but I'm from the country, so that's where I grew up. We are the fourth largest tribe in the nation. Our reservation is about 3.2 million acres, so we're about the same size as New Jersey. We're an at-large voting tribe, so we have 100,000 citizens, so every one of them, I would say about 75,000 are teenagers and adults, so they all have my mobile number. So if you see me back there just constantly on my phone, that's what they do. We text these days, we don't call, but I'm excited to be here and can't wait to sit down with Derek and talk about leadership. Mado. Right here. Yes, sir. All right, well, I have a small presentation, so I'll go ahead and get into that. We got on the same program just really quickly. Again, William Lowe, I'm very excited to be a board member for the National Center. It was such a great honor. You know, that year that I became a board member, it was in my first campaign. I've only been a councilman for about 3 years now. I've been a speaker for 2, so it was very quickly that my peers on the council elected me as Speaker of the House. So for me, my background, I have 3 daughters, a wife. I'm the oldest of 7 children. We all have different dads. We're just a small, poor country family in Oklahoma, right? So for me, the way that I will kind of do this presentation is a chronological sequence of my life and how I got to where I am today. So common types of leadership that we all know of, we're all business owners, we all work for the tribe, so I won't have to go and read all those right there, but for the next generation, you know, when we have a Muskogee Youth Council where we're at, and all these young folks look at us council representatives, and they really come to our meetings and try to mimic and see what we do, and they have their own small council, and it's working very great for them. So these are the common types of leadership that we usually see. And influential leadership factors for me are my family, the military, and tribal leadership is what I am in today. So the Muskogee families, our Muskogee Creek families were matrilineal. So for me, when I say I'm the oldest of 7, my grandmother actually raised me and my 7 siblings. So for us, she made all of our decisions. You know, she passed away. The next auntie filled in her position, and we always listened to our women in our tribe. And for me, I told my wife, and she's very glad that I say this, but no matter what position I get into the tribe, she makes our decisions. So we've been here in New York since Tuesday morning, and everything she wants to do, we've done it, and I do it with a smile on my face. It goes from lunch to dinner to whatever we do, she makes our decisions. And that's how I was raised, and that's what I honor in my tribe. So when I was young, being the oldest of 7, me and my 2 sisters attended the Eufaula boarding school. Our tribe has a Creek Nation boarding school. There were about 200 and almost 300 kids when I went. I graduated in 1992, so there were a lot of kids there. We stayed there 7 days a week. We didn't come from the best families, so we had a place to sleep, to eat, 3 meals a day, to learn. So for me, in boarding school, leadership-wise, that's where the authoritative and structured leadership came in, right? I've always had schedules, know what time I was going to eat, know what time I was going to study, sleep. So it created an institutional type atmosphere as well. Highly structured environments and proponents of supervised work environments. So again, our days were, we knew when we were getting up, like for me, I went there since first grade till I graduated high school. My whole job, the whole 12 years, is I cleaned our water fountain. Believe it or not, some kids had to sweep and mop the deck, the whole hallway, not me. I got very lucky, I guess, and I just cleaned the same water fountain for 12 years. So for me, that was my job. I knew when I had to do it, and if I didn't do it and do it right, I was going to be in trouble. So that's kind of where some of the structured leadership came into play. Military leadership. I was in the Marine Corps from as soon as I got out of boarding school. I tried college for about 3 weeks. Wasn't for me. I just knew it wasn't for me, right? I wasn't mature enough to learn yet. So for me, my uncles were Marines, friends were Marines, so I went to the Marine Corps. And boot camp to me was very easy because I was already used to living a structured way, making my bed, just like I think our patrons had. We had some Army guys in our boarding school, so we had to make the racks the same way we did in the Marine Corps. So in Marine leadership is authoritative, physical, knowledge, and skills-based. So authoritative, me being in the infantry, you do what I say or else, right? That's how the Marine Corps instilled that in us in the infantry. And I'll tell you, like, for me, I was in there 9 years. I probably didn't see a female Marine for my first 6 years. I just happened to go to school in Quantico and happened to see a female military person. So for us, it was all males, and it was just, you see those movies like Jarhead or Full Metal Jacket, that's how it is. And, that's the authoritative side of it. But the physical side is, as a Marine leader, if you can't shoot a weapon and you can't shoot expert, if you can't swim the highest swim qualification you have, if you can't lead your men or women 18 miles with a 70-pound pack on your back and still yell and influence them to do their job, they're going to find someone else to do it, right? So for me, that's where the physical type stuff comes into play. And knowledge and skills based. So I would say back in 1999, I was the second class of a primary military education course called Sergeant's Course. I was in Camp Lejeune. They ran out of all seats for this course, so they said, all right, you three, me and my two buddies, you're going to go up to Quantico, Virginia to go to this sergeant school. We knew it wouldn't be infantry-based, right? So we were kind of nervous about it, and oh, great, now we're going to be with all these other than grunts, right? So we went up there, and there were 88 sergeants at this school. And to me, it was very intimidating because we had to take this test called Nelson-Denny. And took the test, I had no idea what I was doing. I can read, but we lived out in the field, right? We didn't really read books all the time and do all those kinds of things. So our sergeant major calls us in. So us three that are from Camp Lejeune in the infantry, he says, you guys scored a third grade reading level. This material is too advanced for you. We're going to have to send you back. We're like, please don't do that, because in the Marine Corps, if you have a bad fit rep, you don't get promoted, right? So for us, we begged and pleaded. He listened to us. He said, man, I was an infantryman myself. I understand where you're coming from. So he let us stay. 4 months later, I graduated number 1 as the honor grad, and the other 2 were 2 and 3. So I don't know if that scared us to start studying and listening, but it sure did. And right now in the Marine Corps Museum in D.C. or Quantico, I have a little name placard in there with my name on it, and I'm the only Muskogee. Oh, thank you. but I'm the only Muskogee Creek citizen to ever do that so far. So, when I was campaigning and, our tribe really embraces veterans, right? So I make sure I tell everybody that. So thank you all. I appreciate you very much. But again, the leadership skills, the autocratic, bureaucratic, laissez-faire, and pace setter are some of that in the military leadership. Now, where I am today, tribal leadership, it's very different for me. I would say when I got out of the Marine Corps, when we just had a good HR presentation. So for me, I got out after 9 years, didn't have any higher education. I would apply for jobs because I felt that I had the skills needed, but again, it said bachelor's degree required, associate's degree required. So for me, it was like starting all over again, and I always tell this story, but for me, it was like doing the summer youth tribal employment again, because I had to start at a lower level and work my way up, but it motivated me to get my undergrad degrees at Bacone College. And that year that I was telling y'all, the year that I got selected to serve on the National Center, that same year, I got my MBA at Grand Canyon University. So for me, that, getting denied those jobs really taught me that I need to get my education. So that's that same year that I got selected as the board member for the National Center is the year that I won my campaign as a councilman for the Muskogee Creek Nation. So it was just a great year for me, and to get into the tribal leadership, of course, servant leadership, right? For me, being in boarding school, being a military man, servant leadership's always been there for me. Always done it, always happy to do it, visionary. As a tribal leader, you gotta have that vision, right? I'm talking to the choir here, don't need to get into it very much, but for us, every decision, every vote that we have are for the next 7 generations. We just don't vote and fix a problem today. It's for 3, 4, 7 generations from there. The democratic part of it is, of course, I really had to learn that kind of stuff, growing up and working in tribes, and I work with several different tribes all over the country. And to me, that's something that I really had to learn. But the laissez-faire, for us, we are a democratic group, but we have committees. So we have a business finance committee, we have a health committee, and we have a land and cultural committee. So we, as a council, there's 16 of us, we don't all have to take on these tasks all together. It's just like many boards, they have a strategic planning group, they have a fundraising group, so that's kind of how we're set up as well. And those are some of the things that I learned as a tribal leader, and I think they're paying off pretty good because, for us, we are doing everything we can to help our citizens, right? So that's something that we do. But that was just a really quick presentation of how I came through my leadership, my experience, and all the things that I've done for not only the country, my family, my boarding school, but my tribe. So, Lowe, and Derek, I'll come sit by you, sir. So thank you all.
Thank you, Will. We got a few minutes here, so let's kind of talk here about leadership. I always hear in the press, are leaders born or are they made? And so, but in my experience, and I think you fit the mold, a lot of individuals that I work with do have a lot of military background and military training. And so I think with that background that you have, probably the answer to the question, are leaders born or made? In your case, leaders are made, with all the training. And so, but this little section here is talking about, I think, the future. And one of the things that I hear most often is that a lot of our young Native children are opting not to come home. They say, tribal government is this way or that way. It's I hear a lot of negative comments. But I kind of grew up in this case, the Navajo system. I always say, well, wait a minute. On the other hand, if you do get a position at your tribe, you're afforded a lot of opportunities to make improvement and to make change. And so when you mentioned your youth council, what do you say to your youth about coming back, either working for your tribe or coming back and trying to set up a business on your land? You have a lot of land.
Yes,
so
sir.
What's your advice on that
Yes,
side?
sir, Derek. Thank you very much for that question. We have a youth tribal council, and we also have a College of Muskogee Nation that's a tribal college. So they're actually I guess, official tribal college as one of the tribal colleges, but they go to an associate's degree. So when our youth council are asking, hey, do I go to our tribal college and then do I go and stay near Oklahoma to go to another college? For me, my first thing is I said, you need to join the Marines and serve your country. But I'm just kidding. But no, I try to tell them that the best thing to do is to get an education outside of your community, because to me, you get around people that see Native Americans in a different way, right? Or they have a different perspective than you do. And I always say, go get educated, then come home and work for us. It doesn't always work that way, but that's the kind of advice that I give them, because, my daughter, I have 3 daughters. My middle daughter is a senior this year. She lives in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. They have their high school. They have a college that goes to the doctorate program. So technically, she could stay in one city her whole career of school for her PhD and never leave that community. So for me, I encourage her. I love you to death. Go to another community, work there, do a summer intern there, but learn different perspectives. So those are some of the advice that I give our kiddos.
I like that. That's my story. Get educated, do some work off res, and come home and try to make a difference. Okay, let's move on. One of the things that I see, and maybe it's just my perspective, but out in Indian country, I see a lot of non-natives that are running either our tribal enterprises. So there's a few exceptions, but just in general around Indian country, I'm still seeing a lot of non-natives running our tribal businesses and enterprises and operations. And so to me, that's probably brings up the point of succession planning.
Right.
And so what's your take on succession planning? I know that for me, having run a few tribal enterprises back home, I had to hire non-Navajos or non-natives, and the first thing I said is that your job, in my opinion, is to put yourself out of a job. You got great skills, we hired you because of your background, but we need you to find someone to replace you. And in many cases, that was almost a threat to the non-native. And after those friendly coaching words, because we are on a reservation, we do have tribal laws. For some reason, it seemed to be a negative. But succession planning, I think, is very, very important, especially if we really want to achieve true economic sovereignty and true self-determination. What's your thought on succession planning in your neck of the woods?
Yes, sir. Derek, I definitely would love to have those conversations with our employees as well. For us, as legislators, the executive branch runs our employees, right? They're over all the employees. So anytime anyone, even if they had a problem, just like the HR class we got just a minute ago, legislators can do so much. We can bring the problem to the chief and his cabinet, and they handle it all, right? So anytime I have an opportunity to educate a cabinet member or talk to one of our health professionals, I always ask and try to encourage them to implement that. Just like our gaming CEO, at one time we were about to have a program to where our gaming CEO was mentoring Muskogee Creek citizens that were either MBAs or business or gaming or whatever the case may be, so that one day when he retired, they could take over. And I want to say they're actually doing that. They just don't have an a broadcasted specific program, but a lot of our leadership in gaming are Muskogee citizens, which to me is great. All of our board of directors have to be Muskogee Creek citizens, and you know, for us, health-wise, we have a really great health program. We have 3 major hospitals that are open to the community. So not only do we serve our Muskogee people, but we serve non-natives, everybody. And that's our 3 hospitals, and we've encouraged our health group to hire Native American doctors, pharmacists, so on and so forth. But we, as legislators, try our best to suggest that, and you know, that's about how far as we can go with that, but we definitely say so, sir. So thank you there.
Yeah, I like that. Let's move on to, and I'm going to the description of the program, the skill set. Years ago, when I was a banker, actually here in town here, years ago, I was with a subsidiary of an investment company. I got to know the president, CEO, and he used to say, you know, Derek, there's 3 things that I live by, and you need to think about it. And this is, you know, my recipe to success. He said, number 1 is, you know, keep yourself well educated, you know, learn, train, you know, it's like a 3-legged stool. And so he said, keep yourself trained. Number 2, be well read. Read everything you can on the business. Just, you know, keep yourself up to speed. And then number 3 is, you know, keep close association with your family and your relatives, because you need that. That's your network. And so, you know, when I'm asked to speak, I always think about you know, his 3-stool prong, and you know, it's coming out today. What's your advice, and what are the principles? I think you mentioned in your program, but just kind of real short, what are your thoughts on skills and being a great leader that I see you are? Well,
yes, sir. Yes,
yeah.
sir. You know, for me, I encourage, and I'll go back to talking to our Muskogee youth and our mentorship with them. You know, when they ask what it takes to be a leader, you know, for me, one of the hardest things that I had, but now I had to do and overcome, but it's one of my major traits now, is listening. You know, not only as a Marine leader, I didn't listen to anything. I just knew what I was going to do, and that was that. And if you didn't do it, we were going to have a problem, right? So as I matured from that and was able to start working, I worked with museums. I mean, you name it. I was the tourism director for the Cherokee Nation, believe it or not. And they sent me all over the world to promote their museum in Oklahoma because they did a Trail of Tears play. And, well, people ask me, I've never seen, you know, Native American here in Ireland. What are you doing here? Are you a rugby player? You know, this and that. No, I don't play rugby. I just was a Marine, and so on and so forth. But when the young folks ask what kind of skills, you know, I say, listen, be observant. You know, I attended the NCAIED Harvard program, leadership program, about 3 weeks ago. And for me, I'm not one to ask a lot of questions. I'm not one to sit there and give my 2 cents on a lot of problems or programs, but I observe everything. And I write, take notes, and listen. That's how I learn. And I'm able to implement that when I go home. But I tell our kids and youth, listen to everything, observe everything. You know, to me, I was a very shy kid until I became a Marine. And then I was able to be very vocal. I was able to think about what I was going to say before I said it. You know, I just didn't blurt things out. And I tell them, youth, think about what you're going to say, because that tongue of yours can damage some things in relationships that you may not have meant to do. So for me, I encourage them to get educated. And, you know, a lot of times college isn't for everyone. So I say to a lot of our kiddos, go to technical school, go do a trade to make you the best you can be, to make your family proud. So those are just some of the things that I share with our youth, sir.
I like that, listening. I don't know, I have to ask my wife, am I a good listener? Who's out there? She probably says no. That's really good. Listening, I think that's a key trait that I'm hearing all the time, more so. And so thank you, Will, for that. We're almost out of time here. Anybody have any questions before we close here for Will, Speaker Lowe? Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When working in a supervisory position, how do you monitor your staff, and how would you delegate tasks to them?
Yeah, certainly. You know, one thing that I do is I make sure, like, in our council house, we have 8 staff members, and when I communicate with them, I give them the directions that I need, and I ask them twice, in the beginning and at the end, do you understand what is expected of you? And of course they do, and granted, they're older than me, some of them, but I still do this with them because we never want to mistake anything, because we're dealing with all of the laws in our tribal existence, right? So I ensure that they do that. And at the end of the day, I will go around to each person in our staff, ask how they're doing, how was your day, was it progressive, and is there anything we need to talk about? So that, to me, helps the communication on what's expected of them. And each one of them know that if they have a problem or there's something that probably can't be accomplished, that they can come to me anytime and tell me, and they won't feel any repercussions, because we'll figure a way to figure it out to get it done. So I hope that answered the question, but that's how I work with our group.
That's a great question. Rhonda, question.
Thank you. Thank you, Will, for this presentation today and your service to our nation, both nations. You were raised in a very disciplined regime, boarding schools and then the military. You know, everything is set in place and you're told what to do, and you don't deviate from that for good reason, in many situations. But how did you transition from that mindset to the entrepreneurial mindset, where you have to be really flexible and, sometimes you got to take risks and think outside the box and do different things differently?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. For me, I mentioned how when I got out of the Marine Corps, a lot of the positions required these degrees. And for me, I worked at the Cherokee Heritage Center, and boy, they sure gave me a chance as a membership coordinator, right? I had the computer skills, but I couldn't get the directorship job, so they gave me a chance, and I'll always be grateful for that tribe to do that with me. But when I had to start at them lower level positions, it made me hunger for education, because I would talk to peers and I would say that my family, I've been married 3 times, and for me, my wives would help me understand that you can't always be a Marine to everybody, right? So for me, that was my life experiences. And my wife now, she's a psychology major, so she really, really helps me and does a lot of end-of-the-day consulting, and we talk about how my day went, and her degree is that, so she helps me tremendously. But, for me, being in those structured way of life, my brothers, I have 3 brothers, they're not that way. So I get to see personally how it is for those that have to hunger for themselves and find that entrepreneurship spirit to do better at their job. And I encourage them, always do better than you did the day before. So for me, I think starting at them lower level positions really kind of helped me create that hunger. And as I learned to be an entrepreneur, or even had that hunger myself, I'm here to help people. So that kind of helped me get to where I am today. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Will, for the response. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Well, thank you both. I think we're ready for the next, but let's give
Okay.
them both a round of applause, and thank you so much.